Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home. It's the middle of April, so we thought it would be a great time for a tour. I hope you join us. I thought I'd start by showing you the spring garden. These are the bulbs that I planted back in the fall, and look at how pretty they are. And actually, there was even more of them, but I took some in for a bouquet. I've got daffodils and I've got hyacinths blooming, and tulips are just starting to bloom. The birds have been coming to the little tiny fountain feature, which is very nice. And the roses pretty much came back really beautifully. I am going to repot some of the ones that are in the shallower containers just to give their roots a little bit more room. But I'm very pleased with how this looks. I'm very excited about this bed here. In the middle there you see the celery that overwintered, and it's really loving this weather. But what's really exciting are all of the celery seedlings that were scattercasted from the celery flowers last year and made it through the winter. Some of them were not even underneath the cover. Now I had them kind of almost as weeds all throughout this garden bed. So before I planted up the fava beans, which you see here, I have a little support for them because they'll get about this high and they'll start to flop over if they don't have support. But before I did that, I needed to move out of the way a lot of the seedlings, and I kind of concentrated the area that they're going to grow towards the middle there. Also, just the other day, in this row going down here, and this row on the side going down here, I planted carrots. Now, normally I would cover that with stakes just to make sure that they stay damp enough to germinate, which I did not do, and I can still do that, but instead I came out here and I watered because we've actually been getting quite a bit of rain, and I need to water again today. But they have not sprouted yet. But these are fava beans that I started from seed in February. Here is a broccoli rabe, and I've been harvesting off of this already. And this is a volunteer fennel plant. And there's some carrots here too, from seeds that I scattercasted from a flowering carrot that was here. Here is, it looks like an onion or a leek that I forgot to harvest. I'm just gonna leave that in there and see what happens. So I consider this pretty much planted up until I get the tomatoes in. And the idea is, and again, when you have a small space, you're trying to maximize as much space as possible. I'm going to plant the tomatoes underneath their supports. They're big, tall, lanky supports. And the fava beans will probably be, you know, about this high. The tomatoes will be small enough, but when they start really growing, the fava beans will be on their way out, and then I can pull them when the tomatoes really need this space. So that's the idea with this bed. Coming over here, I planted up the bok choy. Those are seedlings that I started back in February. And here are the carrots that were sown just by scattering the seeds from the carrot flowers last fall. Well, I guess it was in the middle of the summer, but they overwintered, and now I've been pulling them. Now, the thing about overwintered carrots is that they can get a little bit tough, but you can also cook them. Over here, I planted some beets. It's a little too early for them. And coming around over here, lavender row. Hasn't really started its spring growth yet, but it's looking pretty good. And then in this bed, here's a lily that's starting to come up, and she's had some babies, so I'm hoping that those plants will give me some flowers this year. This is Swiss chard that I planted in the fall of 2022, and it is now the spring of 2024. So they never got really big. They didn't bolt, but they have been producing these little leaves for a very long time, and that made it through the winter without any covering on it. Some more carrots, another volunteer lily, and I do need to start weeding this out. I've got some echinacea starting to come back. That, as you know, is a perennial. And then here are some garlic bulbs that I completely forgot to take out. That's the problem when you don't really get out every single bulb, is that eventually it'll start growing. So I'm just gonna leave them in there and see what happens. And here's some more echinacea. As you can see, I need to weed. In these grow bags, I planted some peas about 2 weeks ago. They're starting to come up. And this is chamomile that I had growing volunteering in a couple of pots around the garden, so I moved them into here, into this container. And the mint looks lovely. And I try to keep it contained in this box. Sometimes that doesn't work. This bed is also a bit of a mashup of a number of different things. We've got a broccoli rabe here. We've got, I had a spare fob I decided to put over here against this trellis for support. Got a whole bunch of garlic. That's really started to come up. This is a cabbage that overwintered. This is a red acre cabbage. And I had it under cover, and I recently took the cover off because it was outgrowing its cover. And here is some cabbage that I just planted the other day. And I have these under domes. Those are cloches that I got at the dollar store for $1.25 each. I picked up a bunch of them. They're just kind of cheap plastic, and this is not ideal as we're really getting into, well, it's gonna cool down again, but like today, it's almost 80 degrees. So this is probably not ideal for them. However, I need to keep them protected because the cabbage seems to always be ravaged by rabbits. So I do need to protect them, and I'm probably going to replace these domes with some sort of, well, I call it frost cloth, but it's frost cloth, agra fabric kind of thing that just, well, I'll show you. Like this. So this is where I have more cabbages and more garlic. So this is what I have underneath. Here is a golden acre cabbage that I planted and overwintered under plastic. This one here was also overwintered, and that one there also overwintered. And I actually didn't think they made it at all because when I checked on them not too long ago, there was nothing there. So I thought that they had succumbed. Then all of a sudden they were there. And then I planted here and there and there some Copenhagen cabbage. Now, if you remember from an older video, I had a huge broccoli plant right here. I mean, it was growing out over the bed. And I did take that down, but then I noticed these little sprouts coming up from the base, and I said, well, let me see what happens with these I don't know what's gonna happen. I might just pull the whole thing, but I don't know. It's an experiment. Then we've got garlic. So again, I call this frost cloth. It's good for frost protection, but it's also really good for bug protection and pests like the rabbits. It confuses them. If you've got it, you know, down tight enough, the rabbits can't get underneath it. I don't really have a problem with mice around here, but I guess you would have to really batten it down to make sure that the mice wouldn't get in. But I think they call it generally a floating row cover because it kind of floats on top of the plants and it doesn't damage the leaves. In these grow bags over here are brassicas that I overwintered that the rabbits did not get to. My Brussels sprouts, once again, I'm a little disappointed because instead of, you know, these tight little round Brussels sprouts, they're starting to go to flower. Which actually is fine. I pick it at the same time I'm picking on the broccoli rabe, and we had some for dinner. And actually as sprouts like this, Brussels sprouts are much sweeter than broccoli rabe. They're really actually quite good. But I would like to be able to get some, you know, round cabbagey looking Brussels sprouts one day. Here's an overwintered cauliflower that just got chomped on by an animal. And then here is a Walden broccoli I planted in here. Another row of garlic. And I'll be planting something in here. I'm not sure what yet. This year I'm trying not to be as regimented and just as space is needed, finding it. If you were with me from my eclipse video, this is where I planted the potatoes, just regular organic red and russet potatoes from the supermarket. And then in this bed here, you've got a broccoli rabe, a bunch of garlic, and under those domes are all Walden broccoli that I started from seed, also back in February. And again, I'm going to figure out a way to get frost cloth on them to protect them from rabbits without covering up the broccoli rabe. I'm gonna have to figure that out. These are lilacs, 2 dwarf lilac plants. They've got little buds on them now. And the blueberries. These bushes are starting to bud, and soon they'll have flowers. And then soon I'm going to be battling the birds to stay away from my blueberries. And the butterfly bush over here. This year never really completely died back, and that's really starting to leaf out as well. So in here, I've got some seedlings, taking a little drink of water. As you can see, I bottom water, and I use just a tiny bit of liquid organic fertilizer mixed with some water. And they're just taking a nice drink. I've got here, this is the rose that I propagated last year. It's the only one that made it. And I've got calendula, milkweed, chamomile. In the back here are some melons, cantaloupe, watermelon, and honeydew. I needed to resow them because a couple of them popped up and then quickly died. So I tried again just a couple of days ago, and now I've got some seedlings going. And I've got sweet peas here. I'm going to start hearting them off. As you can see, I needed to tie them up. They're climbers. So at a pretty young stage, you need to start letting them trellis up something. These are just like little floral sticks that I've got. And I'm going to get ready to harden them off so I can plant them outside in their forever spot soon. Here's the fan I've got. It's a pretty fancy fan that I got as a gift. And it's got a kind of vacillating, it doesn't go side to side, but it does give a strong gust of wind and then a lighter gust of wind. And I thought this would be really much better for my seedlings than just a constant fan on them. Right now I've got that fan trained up here on these peppers and an eggplant. Here are all the different types of basil that I sowed. I sowed those 9 days ago. I've got them under my little portable lights here. And then the tomato seedlings that are now in desperate need of potting up or thinning. And I have to make the decision on which ones I'm going to pot up and which ones I'm going to just thin. Over here, I have a whole bunch of different types of flowers. I've got alyssum, cosmos, marigolds, pansies, and zinnias. And I did have them, if you saw my video on how to winter sow using a mini greenhouse, I did that. And a number of these, the taller ones, did germinate and they were starting to grow. But I gotta be honest, I became a little impatient. So I resowed about 11 days ago so I could get more flowers, and some of them have started coming up. So I have a whole bunch more seedlings going on now. I am going to move it back into the greenhouse shortly though, because I'm going to need this space here. And down here on the lower shelf, I've got peppers, all the different types of peppers, and some eggplants also mixed in there. And I repotted these a few days ago, and they've taken very nicely to their new pots. Unfortunately, this group of peppers and the eggplant have been suffering from some aphids that I've been trying to keep an eye out for and squish and treat as I can. But that's the little bit of wilting and damage that you see there. But overall, they're still pretty healthy considering. In the mini greenhouse, I've got some lettuce and Swiss chard. This is my second round of lettuce. And the onions are not looking very good, but I'm probably going to repot them. I think it's time for them to move out of these tiny cells and into bigger pots until they go into their forever place in the garden. And then back here I've got some leeks. I've got a lone cauliflower, that's the only seedling that lived. I've got some feverfew and some comfrey. Those are gonna go into my medicinal flower bed. Going behind the mini greenhouse, you see I've got some thyme and also some weeds. It always gets very weedy back there. I do my best to try to get behind it. The oregano is starting to come up. I need to cut back some more of that dead wood. And then I got some catnip coming up as well. And over here, the deck containers. In these pockets, I have spinach. Now, some spinach I had put in actually in the fall, hoping to overwinter some, and there's an example of that. That was a giant winter. It looked really, really dead up until just a few days ago. It started to get some green on it. I was going to pull it. And then I went through in March and re-sowed pretty heavily with Bloomsdale spinach. So here's one that's doing very well, but the rest of them have really started sprouting now. And here you can see where I pretty densely seeded. So I'm actually going to transplant some of these into the other pockets where they didn't germinate. And then up here, my herb containers, sage is starting to leaf out again. I've got some tiny dill seedlings. Those were just self-seeded from last year's dill here. The lemon balm made a beautiful comeback. The parsley never quit all winter long. I had these in the mini greenhouse all winter, and so they seem to have really come out of it. And here's some cilantro. I did seed some in March, and you can see the tiny sprouts there. But these, the ones with more than their baby leaves, were actually in the greenhouse like that all winter. So now that it's a little bit warmer, I'm hoping that they'll start to really take off. The rosemary, thyme, and the chives I thought actually had completely died. They were just totally dead and brown. And then look at what happened. So make sure in the spring, before you start pulling plants that you think are dead, you give them enough time to redeem themselves. The strawberry cart up here on the deck has also really made quite a comeback, and I'm already seeing some flowers. A sure sign we're going to get some strawberries soon. And I did see some bumblebees out, but because there really aren't that many insects right now to pollinate, what I like to do is just kind of pollinate myself with my finger. The pretty pansies in their second year are doing very well, but the rosemary is not. This is one that I had propagated about 2 years ago, and it was growing great. I overwintered it in the greenhouse, but what happened was I think I let it dry out. It was on the top shelf, which gets a lot of sun, but even in the winter you have to keep an eye out and make sure things are getting watered, and that's what happened. I don't know if this will bounce back or not, but I have been using the rosemary in cooking because it dried perfectly. It's not moldy or virusy or anything, so I've just been cooking with it. Here are some snap peas that I direct sowed right into this planter beginning of March. They're starting to really take off. The green stalk is looking great. I've got some Merlot lettuce in here, endive, some red oak leaf lettuce, some spinach, and a little bit of arugula. And I have been picking. We've had a couple of salads out of here already. And this sage is also starting to bounce back. And then I've got some more peas in here. This was last year's hibiscus. If you know, I had tried to overwinter it inside, got taken by aphids. But it's got some nice branches, so I thought it would be perfect to trellis the peas on. I have to tell you, I am so glad that I put these spring bulbs in, and I have this beautiful garden now, and little prayer garden with Mary. I can come out and I can pray and meditate and relax a little bit, not just always work and be on the go. It's certainly a suggestion of mine, if you've got a garden, is to make sure you have like room to relax in it, not just always work in it. That's a lesson I need to learn, and I hope I'll do that this year. And I can smell the hyacinths from here, and it's really nice to have that kind of color this time of year. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like, and I hope you subscribe and join our growing community. And from the Ladies Garden and Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye! Say goodbye, lady.